Thanks, Anna. I want to start by thanking Piero for inviting me. I always enjoy things that he organizes because they usually yank me out of my comfort zone of talking to people at meetings who about the same things we always talk to with each other at meetings. Usually he asks me to do something usually asks me to do something such that my first reaction to it is, what? And so in this case he said, can you give us a talk to basically justify why we should do space exploration? Obviously not something we normally talk about in meetings of people who are doing space exploration, but it's interesting, which is why I always agree whenever he asks me to do something, because it forces me to think, yeah, how would I explain what I'm doing and why we're doing it to a broader audience, besides just the bubble that I'm in. And actually I'm becoming a big fan of the bubble, by the way. Why watch the news when you can live in your bubble? I recommend that. So I'm going to try to, I took his question and mulled it over and decided that the approach I would take, which is a little bit of a cop-out, instead of trying to justify in detail why what I'm doing, why what NASA's doing is relevant to life on Earth, I knocked the question up one to why explore at all? Why explore space? Why are we exploring space? And so I put together some thoughts, some slides that I think approach it from explain my approach to this, my answer to that question, to that challenge that Piero put forward. Why are we exploring space? And so I hope to stimulate some argument or discussion on it. So I entitled it Why Explore? And sort of the sub-themes are life, the universe, and everything, trying to understand life, the universe, and everything. And also, just to go. Can we go? Not go, but stay, to boldly stay. So I start by tying to, in the spirit of these kind of meetings, to art and history conceptions of the answer to this question. And the question was well posed by John Kennedy in a famous speech he gave. That was part of it has become part of the lore of the space program, where he, at a football game at Rice University, said, why, some say the moon, why choose this goal? So the question of why fly the Atlantic, why does Rice play Texas? Rice and Texas are football teams. And the answer I'll put, which I also pull from the literature, is the best answer I've seen expressed succinctly is from a nice book by Ursula Le Guin called The Left Hand of Darkness, where the main character is asked why, and the response is material profit, increase of knowledge, the augmentation of complexity, intensity of the field of intelligent life, the enrichment of harmony, and the greater glory of God, curiosity, adventure, delight. Which I don't take every bit of that answer, but I like the answer. It comes together in such a nice way. In art, in the history of art, there's my favorite graphical representation to the question, why explore, is this woodcut, which was done in the 1800s, but was supposed to represent medieval approaches to exploring and understanding the universe and sticking our head out to see how the heavens work. And it's also in color too. So this is it's artistic picture that when I was an undergraduate I had a copy of it because I just thought it somehow represented graphically the quest to understand the universe. So let me now move away from art and history to the more traditional NASA approach, bullet charts with view graphs with bullet items. I'm going to start with why not to explore space, right? The first reason is should not explore space to find a place to go after we've ruined the Earth. That's ethically absurd and technically absurd. When we think about the Earth, I think we should invoke another standard NASA saying, failure is not an option. So I think we could dismiss that. I think similarly related to that is the idea that we're going out to find a place to back up the biosphere. I think trying to maintain the biosphere is a good goal, but invoking it as a rationale for space exploration, I think, is both disingenuous and technically incorrect. We should ask ourselves the question in the front. We shouldn't invoke that as a rationalization. We should approach that question from the forward direction. What do we need to do to maintain the biosphere? What do we need to do to ensure its short-term survival vis-a-vis our own actions and its long-term survival in the context of the solar system and this part of the galaxy? Those are good questions, and we should address them. But we should address them in the forward direction rather than we want to do X and our rationale is back up the biosphere. Not to find a home free of regulation and control. Regulation and control will follow us everywhere we go. We take it to Antarctica, we have regulation and control. The notion that we will set up a colony on the moon and Mars and it will somehow be a utopia free from regulation and control and humans will act perfectly and beautifully in harmony is silly. It's almost as silly as the idea that we can build a Great Wall and hide behind it. You know, Hadrian tried this. The Great Wall in China is a testimony to the futility of this. So any suggestion to build a wall is just stupid, and the idea that we could do one in space is also stupid. They just don't work. Right? You can't hide behind the Great Wall. And the approach that NASA headquarters likes to put forward is all these spin-offs, technology spin-offs, more Velcro and Tang. I reject that. If we want to have more Velcro and Tang, the better thing to do is create a research center that commercially driven that's going to come up with more Velcro and Tang. It's not a rationale for explanation. So this is my negative slide, all the reasons not that are sometimes offered, commonly offered, that I think we should reject. They're not valid motivations for exploring in general and exploring space in particular. So what are the reasons I would give? I would give this list of reasons. And the reasons are color-coded. The green ones refer to our responsibility as the management division of life on Earth to manage Earth. The red ones are science goals, fundamental, interesting science goals. I made them bold, red, and underlined because those are the ones that I'd like to do, right? And then the blue ones are the more long-term, more spiritual, if you will, goals. So in the practical area, studying other planets will help us manage the Earth. Earth is subject to space hazards. You saw that meteorite that hit that city in Russia. Fortunately didn't hurt anybody, but knocked out a lot of windows. That stuff is going to happen. We're the only species on Earth that can take action on that, and we should. And of course, there's discussion of possible resources in other objects, near-Earth objects, and their use for improving life on Earth. All good things, and we should be doing all those. The ones in red are the ones I really get excited about. Understand why the universe is the way it is, why it seems so tuned for life, and understand how life arose, its diversity, its fundamental nature, and is there a second genesis of life out there? So those are the questions that I've focused on, and I'll talk a little bit more about them. But then, moving even beyond that, the goal is enhance the human experience and address the question, is space, are other planets, a place where humans can go? Can we live and work? Can we live and work on Mars, for example, or is it just a place that we will visit? And finally, what I think is the ultimate goal, the long-range goal, the goal that answers the question, what makes sense to do? If you think of the long-term future of humanity, think hundreds of thousands of years or millions of years, what makes sense to do? And to use a current metaphor, we can either stay home and play video games, and that's sort of the AI machine intelligence vision that you sometimes hear promulgated. Or we could go outside and explore the neighborhood, see what the rest of the universe is like. And so I obviously, you can tell by my choice of descriptors, prefer the latter one. Let's go outside and see what the universe is like. And let's try to enhance the richness and diversity of life in the universe. Life is the most interesting, valuable, or most interesting thing we've seen, and it's the likely source of value in the universe. We could enhance the richness and diversity of life in the universe as an ultimate goal. So let me now pick up some of those science questions. One of the biggest, deepest mysteries about the universe is that there's life in it. And that seems somewhat trivial because you say, well, there's life everywhere. We see it all the time. We eat it for breakfast, we eat it for lunch, we eat it for dinner. But we've only recently begun to appreciate how cosmically important it is that the universe is designed the way it is to allow life to be in it. And we don't understand that. And that has led to so many, I think, crackpot theories, like the multiverse theories or design theories. I think those are examples that we don't know what we're talking about. We see a phenomenon, we have no idea how to approach it. The universe seems tuned for life. I won't dwell on that in detail. It can be the subject of an entire symposium like this, the fine-tuning problem. More immediately is the question of Mars. It's one of the worlds I'm involved in looking and exploring. It seems to have been suitable for life billions of years ago. We want to understand, does it have life now? Did it have life in the past? Could it have life in the future? The recurring theme that I promote for why I explore space, science-wise, ties to life. It's all about life. Life is the question that we want to answer. So I would say, well, one of the other questions about this picture of Mars is, if this is Mars in the past, could we also bring it back in the future? Could we make Mars once again a world for life, a concept called terraforming? And some years ago we wrote a statement that the ultimate motivation for terraforming and space exploration is enhancing the abundance and diversity of life in the universe and enriching the lives of humans. And I still stand by that statement. That is the ultimate goal, I would submit, of going out into space and exploring it, is to understand the universe, the planets, so that we can do something, and that's something that we would do is enhance the abundance and diversity of life in the universe and enrich the lives of human beings. If you think about it, what else is there worth doing in the broad sweep of large actions and large activities, planet-wide civilization and so on? And the particular question that presents us right now in our time, and framing that approach, is the question of, are we alone? Is life in the universe just us, or is there a diversity out there? Because how we go about enhancing the abundance and diversity of life in the universe depends on the answer to that question. And that's an empirical question. No amount of theory or holy writ will answer that question for us. We have to go and look and see what the answer is. And the immediate way of going and looking is going to other planets and searching for evidence of a second type of life, a different type of life, what I call a second genesis of life, life 2.0. Just finding one more example would tell us that life is common in the universe by the well-known 0-1 infinity rule. This is you can Google it, 0-1 infinity rule. If you Google it, it will be described as if it is a part of computer science, but in fact it was first formulated by Isaac Asimov in science fiction, which usually leads the way anyway. He was talking about gods in the universe. He said you could have 0 gods, you could have 1 god, or you can have an infinite number of gods. But it didn't make any sense for there to be 14 gods or 21 gods. Right? Same logic applies to life. There could be 0 life in the universe. Okay, we know that's not the case. There could be 1, and that's where we are now. If we can get to 2, then we know that the answer is essentially infinite. That it's all sorts of... If life started twice right here in our own little solar system, we know the universe is full of diverse, independent life forms. So I tell my management, my job description really is to count from 1 to 2. If I can get to 2 in terms of life forms in the universe, that's all I need to do. Someone else can take it from 2 to 3 to infinity. Right? So we want to ask the question, is there a second genesis of life in our solar system? And Mars is how we do it. So now I want to take my answers into a little personal story. So when we remind you, I first talked about exploration and our motivation in sort of a historical and literature context, and then in terms of the science we're doing. And now, one of the things I enjoy doing is going out and exploring new environments myself, experiencing it directly as a human being. This is a lake in Antarctica, in a remote, inaccessible part of Antarctica. We've did an expedition there, several. This picture is taken on our first expedition a few years ago. This is our camp. This is the middle of summer, warmest day of the year. It's freezing cold and nothing survives on the shore. It's dead. This is ice-covered lake. This is our camp. We bring all of our stuff out, everything that we bring out with us. This is the facilities right here. There's another restroom on to the right behind these rocks. And I just want to point out that we were way ahead of the gender debate in terms of access to restrooms. You can use our restrooms no matter what your gender, self-proclaimed, cross-proclaimed, or whatever. But this is our camp, and we're exploring this lake, cutting a hole in it. The ice in that lake is about as thick as this room, and below it there's a huge body of water, 100 meters deep, 150 meters deep of water. And this is our first entry into that lake. So in a real sense, we were exploring this site. We were the first human beings to cut a hole, the tunnel really, through that ice and go in that lake. And this is Dale, our PI, our leader, going in and making the first dive. And I was thinking about it, he's not just the first human being in that lake, he's the first vertebrate that's ever been in that lake. And that's me there, and Michael, I don't remember this exactly, but I think what I'm saying to him is, hey Dale, we're going to go back to the tent and have a coffee. We'll come back out for you later. No, probably not. And then this is the next day, I'm going down. I think I was the third person in the lake. But it does, and why are we doing this? What's the attraction here? Was we were trying to understand if there was life in the lake. And there is. There's huge mounds of microbial material. So there's no large animals in this lake, just microorganisms. And they form mounds. They're about this big. And it's an important discovery in terms of analogs for Mars and what we might find as microbial life on Mars and analogs for the early Earth. So it is a scientific discovery, but it was an element of direct exploration that for me was very illuminating about how we as human beings relate to that role. And I think it's a very important and an important part of being human is to do this kind of exploration. I think it's part of our story, the human story. And so I think that's part of the motivation too. And I think to illustrate it with a personal story, I think is a good way to illustrate it. That's how I relate to it as well. And then this is the end. This slide is blank. It was intentionally left blank, but this is then my chance to thank you for your attention and open up for questions.
So, where are they and are they doing space exploration?
Pardon?
Where are they and are they doing space exploration?
When are they?
Where?
Oh, where are they? Oh, where are they? And are they doing space? That's the question. Let me answer that question by going back, or let me answer that question while I have this slide on, because that is the question. Is there a they? Is there a they? You look up in the night sky, and it is a huge universe. It's just staggering how big it is. It's hard to think that n is really one. That life, that this is it. That life on Earth is it. It's hard to reconcile that with the intuitive feel you get looking up into space. But if you look at the data, that's all the data that we have right now. Now, I agree with you, data is very sparse, but we have nothing to suggest that there's life on any of the other planets, any hard evidence of it. We're searching. We see now planets elsewhere around other stars. We have not a single hard data point to argue that n is not one, but it's two. And I argue that that is a fundamental question about the nature of the universe that we have to answer in order to understand what we do. So to get to Piero's actual question, the answer is, I don't know. My guess is that that life is common, that intelligence is common, and then it gets the question, are they doing space exploration? Because if they are, we don't see them, and that's the so-called Fermi paradox. Where are they? If there's advanced civilizations elsewhere and they're roaming the universe, why don't we see them flying by? Now, some people will say we do, and they have a particular fascination with New Mexico, but there's no scientifically credible evidence that they are flying by. So I don't know. I think the answer, as I said earlier, is we got to go search. It's an empirical question, and it's a fundamental question about the nature of the universe that we need an answer to if we're to understand what we are to do in the universe.
Say you guys do find it. Would your superiors share that information with the public?
That's a good question. And that's why this picture is here, actually. Because I often get questions, people will come up to me when I give a public talk and say, isn't it true that in a secret hangar at NASA, you've got aliens and you're just holding it secret? And my response to that is twofold. First, to be flattered that they could think that an organization of 30,000 government employees could keep a secret. Like I said, I'm flattered that they would think we could keep a secret. So what I usually tell them is, or that we would keep it secret. I would love to be able to announce that we have life. But what I usually say is, yes, we do, and here's a picture of them. These are the aliens in my secret closet in Ames, and they are not on our tree of life, and so therefore they are aliens. But the sad reality is no, we have no evidence. There's no secret lockers anywhere or anything.
What's the probability you think that we'll find evidence of life on Mars ultimately?
Yeah, the question is a hard one. What's the probability we'll find evidence of life on Mars? And let me expand the question to say, or Europa, or Enceladus, or Titan. I think right now our best chance in the near term is Enceladus, little moon of Saturn with a jet of water and organics coming out. And in my, right now we are preparing a proposal to do a mission through that plume and search for evidence of life. If that mission is selected and evidence of life is in the plume and we find it with our instruments, that data will come back to Earth in the year 2038. It just takes a long time to fly to Saturn, right? So 2038 is 20 years from now. You can do the math, it'll be 20 years older 20 years from now. But Mars is closer, we can get there faster, but it's a lot harder. We've got to drill deep below the surface to find evidence of life, I think. Chances are not as good, but we'll try. So overall, I think it's a reasonable chance that on timescales of the next 30 years, we will have explored our solar system enough to know whether there's life in our solar system. And if we're lucky, we'll find life either on Mars or Enceladus, and if we're even luckier, we'll find evidence of a different type of life.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris. I'm sorry we've run out of time.